The news. President Trump doubling down on his push to identify the Ukraine call whistleblower.
Yeah, and that's going over well. The search for answers comes as Democrats subpoena the president's personal attorney named Rudy Giuliani, but I don't want to give it all away.
Griff Jenkins joins us live from Washington to break it all down. Hey, Griff.
Good morning, Steve Ainsley, Brian. The House Democrats are blazing forward, subpoenaing, as you mentioned, Rudy Giuliani. The chairman of 3 House committees are accusing him of jeopardizing national security, writing in a letter. You acted as an agent of the president in a scheme to advance his personal political interests by abusing the power of the office of the president. The chairman wants text messages, phone records, and other communications believed to be in Giuliani's possession. Now, when asked last night if he'll comply, Giuliani had this to say.
Oh, I don't know. I'm weighing the alternatives. I'll kind of like go through it. I'll get all my evidence together. I'll get my charts. I don't know if they let me use videotapes and tape recordings that I have.
Meanwhile, the president continued to rail against the whistleblower, defending his Ukrainian call.
Well, we're trying to find out about a whistleblower. When you have a whistleblower that reports things that were incorrect, as you know, and you probably now have figured it out, the statement I made to the president of Ukraine, a good man, a nice man, was perfect. It was perfect.
And we're learning that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo may have been listening in on the Ukraine call. Now, remember, Pompeo has already been subpoenaed by those House committees. Walk this out just a little bit, guys. There's questions over whether the Senate would take up impeachment if the House voted in favor of any articles. Well, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he would have no choice but to do so based on the Senate's rules. Guys?
That's right, Griff. Thank you very much. So if Rudy does not produce this evidence that they're asking for by October 15th, and he just said he doesn't know whether or not he's going to comply, don't be surprised if the House Democrats then use the fact that he did not comply in one of their articles of impeachment against the President of the United States.
Oh, you know they will.
If passed as prologue, because that's what they did during the Nixon days.
They're asking for his text messages, his phone records, and other communications. They're asking for documents and depositions from 3 of his business associates and says he has to turn this over by October 15th. Right. They're trying to rush this through.
Yeah, they are. They're trying to get it done quick because people start realizing this is going to be a redux of the Mueller probe, which never ended, which had sensationalistic headlines and then would produce very little, and in the end, end with a thud. So if they think they can rush it through, they can get the focus back on 2020 and onto their candidates who, if you watch SNL, even SNL has trouble realizing there's top qualities over there. The other thing to keep in mind is they're going to get a lot of these people like Rudy Giuliani in front of them. They're going to get a lot of people like William Barr in front of them. It's easy to get them there. Then try to score points. I mean, you're going to try to out verbally slug Rudy Giuliani. Best of luck with that. You're going to try to pin William Barr to the ground as if he's done something that he should be covering up. I don't think so. As we're about to discover and go over some of the sensationalistic headlines from yesterday, there's almost no there. There's a big headline that'll get your attention. Then you look at the story, it's easily explained.
I think it gets too much in the weeds. I think first they're going after the president with impeachment. Then they're going after Rudy Giuliani. Now it's Bill Barr. And America's saying, what? How are they all connected? Connect the dots for us. What are you talking about? It's just so much information. And I don't think that the country, if you look at the polls, the recent Quinnipiac poll says 47% of regular voters do want impeachment, 47% don't. Our country is totally divided, split right down the middle.
But they are gaining some momentum on the impeachment.
Yes,
there's been a 20-point net change in the
since
opinion.
Before the release of the conversation.
Right, regarding impeachment. What they're trying to do is they're trying to create the narrative, the Democrats are, that this is a lawless president. That's what they want people to think. Of course, when it goes to the Senate, I don't know that many people who think that he would actually be convicted. Devin Nunes explained what's the rush, because keep in mind, even though Congress is on 2-week recess, I was going to say hiatus, they're full steam ahead. They're going to depose a couple of people this week in this impeachment probe. Here is Congressman Nunes. Listen to this.
This was all concocted, okay? They are rushing to impeachment. They want to get impeachment done before December. Why? Because they know if they go into next year and drag the country through it, it'll continue to be a loser, right? So they have to move fast. One thing they learned with the Mueller probe is that the longer it sat out there, it started to rot, it started to smell, and likely a lot of those people are going to be in trouble.
Well, apparently, according to the Washington Post, Nancy Pelosi ordered the House Democrats to keep the momentum going despite the 2-week hiatus. The staff for 3 committees scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday to depose Marie Yovanovitch, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, who was removed by President Trump's administration this past year. Also, Kurt Volker, who resigned this past week as Ukraine envoy. And on Friday, they're going to talk to the Inspector General of the Intel community, and that would be Michael Atkinson. He's the guy who received the whistleblower complaint. So even though Congress is technically out of town, the Democrats are keeping the pressure on.
Yeah, they're also wanting
They're
to
not
interview.
leaving.
They also want to interview the whistleblower. They said that no date has been set for that, but his lawyer is saying that he's entitled to anonymity. He doesn't want his identity to be put out there because he fears his safety.
So here's the big story yesterday. And expect something every day, but just read beyond the headline. One of the New York Times, Washington Post. Let's begin with the New York Times. Trump pressed Australian leader to help Barr investigate the Mueller's inquiry, the inquiry origins, dating back to before 2016. And the Washington Post had this headline: Barr personally asked foreign officials to aid the inquiry into CIA, FBI activities in 2016. That should not be surprising, because the president's asked publicly and said publicly, now that I have William Barr, which he called a real attorney general, I want to find out what led up to 2016. I want to find out what launched the investigation, what launched into what happened to me and my campaign behind the scenes, because I've been unable to get answers since I got this job, and I've been on constant siege since I got this job, as we wait for Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, to come out with what he found out, and John Durham to work his way through his investigation.
Well, those 2 newspapers presented that news as big bombshells, but it's not bombshells, because the president pretty much told us from the, the White House in May that he wanted the Attorney General to talk to the other countries regarding Mr. Durham's investigation. Let us go back in the Wayback Machine to May of this year.
For over a year, people have asked me to declassify. So what I've done is I've declassified everything. He can look. And I hope he looks at the UK, and I hope he looks at Australia, and I hope he looks at Ukraine. I hope he looks at everything, because there was a hoax that was perpetrated on our country. It's the greatest hoax.
So why are you making this a mystery? You could have included, if you're writing that story, you could have included that soundbite in your story and said, and you want to build up a story, you build it off that. The president admitted earlier, now he found out William Barr took it up on him. Instead, they act like they had this big story that the president's going to look to backpedal, when every day he talks 2 or 3 times a day, if he's going in and out of his house, about things like that. And he is being pressured heavily by Republicans to get to the bottom of all this. So you would think Australia, on their heels, would quickly look to do some damage control. Wrong. They told Fox News, quote, after the president said what he said, we initiated the contact. There was no pressure. We acted in order to help. I got news for you. If we found out that some of our people were affecting the Italian elections or the French elections or the UK elections, we would also say we will help any way we can.
Right. If the Attorney General is looking and they're investigating what happened during the Mueller probe, don't they have the right to talk to other countries? Lindsey Graham said that last night on Sean Hannity's show. Listen to this.
Barr should be talking to Australia. He should be talking to Italy. He should be talking to the UK to find out if their intelligence services work with our intelligence services improperly to open up a counterintelligence investigation of Trump's campaign. If he's not doing that, he's not doing his job. So I'm going to write a letter to all 3 countries and asking them to cooperate with Barr. Now, this is a letter sent by my Democratic colleagues in May of 2018 to the Ukraine, saying that if you don't cooperate with the Mueller investigation, we're going to stop our aid. It's okay to cooperate with Mueller to get Trump, but it's not okay to cooperate with Barr to find out if Trump was a victim of an out-of-control intelligence operation. We're not going to have a country like that.
And let me just add, the reason why those countries matter, remember the name's Ambassador Downer from Australia. Remember the name Joseph Mifsud? He was a London professor originally from Malta. Remember you know why Italy comes up? Because Mifsud mysteriously goes over to a spy school in Italy. That's where Papadopoulos had met him one time. So having said that, there's a few questions that we might want to get answered. If if you sincerely want an answer to the story. But that's not all we found out yesterday.
Do you remember when your son was asking Joe Biden, last week? Did you ever talk to your son about his business dealings with this oil company? And he said, no, we never talked about it. Then it came out that his son said, oh, yeah, we did talk about it once. Look at this picture that's just surfaced. Fox News obtained this. Tucker Carlson show had it last night. That's Joe Biden, second to the right. And then
Hunter Biden is
Hunter
far
Biden's
right.
on the end, right.
And on the far left is Devin Archer, who served on the board of Burisma, that Ukraine gas company, with Hunter Biden, the guy at the other end of that foursome.
So I guess they played golf for 5 hours in silence.
Well, we know for a fact what they did not talk about. They did not talk about that oil company. That's right. They
well, which one's right? He said they didn't. His son said they did.
Well, the vice president was very clear. He has never talked to his son about his business
His son was very clear. We have talked about
Where is my son talking to that guy about his son?
Right. Yeah.
Lots of sons.
Here it is.
How many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
And so how do you know?
Let's talk about, here's what I know. I know Trump deserves to be investigated. He is violating every basic norm of a president. You should be asking him the question, why is he on the phone with a foreign leader, trying to intimidate a foreign leader, if that's what happened? That appears what happened. You should be looking at Trump.
Right.
So he goes on to say, ask the right question, and then Peter asked him 4 more questions, but the vice president, who obviously in that picture was not talking about his son's overseas dealings, Mr. Biden did not answer Peter's question.
But it's always good when your son brings the people he works with to you and you get a chance to meet them. It just so happened the word Burisma never came up.
Brian, the former vice president may not have even known that that guy worked with Hunter Biden.
Right.
We don't know.
They might have shown up.
That conversation was
They
like.
might have shown up at a pair hoping to get a foursome, and the other two Burisma executives just happened to be sitting in the Hamptons lobby and said, okay, I'll play with you.
Don't they say most business dealings are done on the golf course?
I've heard that.
But
They didn't talk about business.
Nope, because the vice president was clear. Never talked about the overseas dealing. So what do you think about that picture? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. We'll share some of that a little later on.
All right. I think he's got a follow-up question. Meanwhile, straight ahead. She spent 30 years as one of Chick-fil-A's top executives, so